What the fuck is good, y'all? Welcome to the John Cat Show, episode 58. Thank you so much for tuning in. It has been a minute. Happy to be back. Unplanned, long hiatus. Happy belated New Year. It's January. It's technically the New Year's episode. Been wanting to do this I plan on coming back with the New Year, but I was doing some revamp. This kind of actually ties into what I want to talk about because I'm so OCD. I've never officially been diagnosed with any of that stuff, but for my understanding of OCD, I have some versions of it. But so I've been revamping new recording space here, and you should see me trying to hang a picture or even getting this camera angle correct, because when you hang stuff on the wall, it's like once you put it on the camera, it's all out of perspective and distorted. I don't understand the first thing about tech or videography or any of that. But so my point is letting all that go, right? If I talk about anything a lot lately before with the show, in real life, on social media, it's releasing all that shit. Because what is that? What is that need to control and get every little aspect of something perfect when it doesn't mean a whole lot? And I think we all have a version of that. And yeah, you got to just let it go. Fuck it. So it's a work in progress. I'm not sure what this episode will look like. Maybe the next one will look different. What it is, it is. What it's meant to be, it'll be. And I got to really trying to embrace that type energy as it applies to all things. And I hope you guys are great. This will be a really positive episode. I'm going to be doing a countdown list too. I talked to a couple people that I really kind of trust with feedback. I do countdown lists on this show. I'm always like, is that, laborious and boring for people? But a couple people that I really like listening to their feedback said, hey, the lists are like my favorite thing, so keep doing the list. So I'm going to be doing top 10 my favorite feel-good songs. I listen to it. If you know me at all, you know my love for music, and so a lot of these lists are music-related. And I've been planning on doing this feel-good list for a minute with the new year and everything, new beginnings and just fresh energy and all that. It's funny, too, apropos to this whole topic. Apropos. What a douchey... I don't even know if I used it right, but I feel like a douche for saying it. Apropos. I don't know. It's one of those words. Germane to this topic. Energy is such a funny thing. And, a lot of the reason I haven't done the show in a while is because of my whole personal struggle with wanting to have just the right kind of energy and intentionality. And then the balance of what I was talking about before, which is kind of like being able to let a lot of stuff go. And, I've been thinking a lot back lately to when I started this show, right after the pandemic. It was the summer of 2020. I just lost my dad a few months earlier and other crazy stuff. And it was really just the first time in my life, a couple things that I even took on any kind of passion project of any sort of creative nature like that. Like I always felt creative, but I never expressed it in any kind of way, or even when it came to social media and putting my personality out there for people and stuff like that, it was never something that I'd been into, or I always wanted to do a pod, and then that aspect kind of always threw me off. But I've been thinking a lot back to that time, and it's really just kind of the most untethered and in a state of like existential questioning I'd ever been. And I kind of thought then, and for a long time until recently, I kind of jokingly would say, and also in truth would say, it's like midlife crisis type stuff, because I think people do go through a version of that really commonly. And but I don't think so. I don't think it's midlife. I think it's more just like this permanent awakening thing, and I don't think it's something to shy away from either at all. And I did record an episode like a couple months ago. I had gone down to the Keys. Those are good energy resetters, like little road trips and stuff. I want to talk about that a little bit too. But I had gotten back from the Keys, and I was like, I'm going to record an episode from my car, just driving around. I was really feeling nature, and the weather was great and the beach, and I drove along A1A and I recorded this down in South Florida, and I recorded this really long episode for you guys. And then I had this little lapel mic that I was using for the first time, and I tested it to make sure, and it worked and everything, but you have to turn it on. And when I tested it, I turned it on. And then when I recorded the ep, I never pressed the power button. So I recorded the whole thing on mute. And then I just kind of took it as a sign, like, hey, you're still keep resetting. I was like, oh, let me just jump in and do a quick ep. I'm feeling, but it was like, you know what? I'm a big believer of that things are just kind of meant to happen as they happen, and that was such a meant to happen thing. So I was immediately really frustrated by it, and then I was like, fuck it. But then again, apropos to all this, coming into this episode even, like, okay, I wanted to record this the other day. I've been wanting to record this since the new year, and then like I said, I've been caught up with all the OCD bullshit in my head about, I don't want to be perfect conditions guy, and I don't like when I see that in other people, and I definitely have a default mode of that myself big time when it comes to controlling like my own environment and shit like that. And I don't want to be perfect conditions guy. If there's anything I want to shed away from my walled up, conflicted type nature, it's that everything's got to be just a certain way in order for me to be comfortable. That's not a good way to be. But so yeah, coming into the show, I was making notes the other day, and I put it through a few things in my phone that I know that I want to talk about, and then without getting into details of my personal stuff, these little things happen. It's the timing of stuff. I want to talk a lot about time, and all that, but timing, separate thing. The synchronicity stuff that I always talk about and the timing of things is just, it'll never again in life feel coincidental to me, some of this stuff, because it's not, and that's a whole nother topic to get into as well. But yeah, something kind of happened that threw my energy off coming into this, and I was like, that's tough. Maybe my immediate inclination, because my unhealthy reaction to shit was, I'll just put it off. I don't want to, I'll wait a while. And I was like, why? For what? If anything has really shown me the progress that I've made with stuff, is that it's how quickly I can adjust on the fly to a lot of stuff that really would have hit me off kilter a lot harder, and then maybe even sent me in permanently a different direction. Whereas now it's like, if you always have that foundation of the blessing gratitude stuff, it's all a fucking blessing, all of it. In a way, sad stuff, not in a way, it is more of a blessing. That's the stuff that makes you feel, God forbid you're numb and not feeling or learning anything. So I can pretty quickly, if my default foundation is to fall back onto the gratitude and the love and the just being open, and that is life, then that's life. And this blessed sip of life is enough, to quote a song, kind of. And if I stress anything with this show and me talking in particular, is that not only don't I want to be preachy advice, life coach, bullshit, any of that guy, and ironically, if it sounds like I'm saying I'm better than these people by saying I have like the anti-message to that, I'm not saying that either. I'm not better than anyone. I am humbled. I am humbled by life and by loss and by pain, like everyone else. And anything I say, it's stuff I'm in the process of discovering and learning and analyzing and figuring it out, if ever, because I have nothing figured out, and I don't want to come off like I have anything figured out, even with my strong ass opinions on a lot of stuff. So that's the point of doing this, is that, and I've been thinking to myself, because that's the whole deal, is the meaning, right? What's the meaning behind something? What's the intention behind something? What's the meaning behind even doing this show? Why would I get on here and even record this stuff and talk to people? What's the point? What's the purpose? What does it mean? What does it matter? And there's kind of this mantra I've been repeating to myself lately in regards to other stuff, which is, you don't have to know exactly what something means to know that it's meaningful. You can feel and recognize that something is the most meaningful thing ever without understanding fully the meaning yet, if you ever will. Maybe it's not to fully understand. But yeah, if there's any underlying theme to most of what I sit and analyze and dissect in myself and in the world and in humanity, it's meaning of life. I don't know if that sounds simple or basic, but it's the simplest thing to say, and then it's the most complicated thing. It's life. What does life mean? None of us know. I was talking to somebody the other day about happiness, about this very topic, to be honest. And when you look at life, it's very angst ridden. It's very based in this hunger and thirst and these primal cravings that go along with, by default, this feeling of unfulfillment, a void. If you're going to have hunger and thirst and urges and all these things, if you think about the way that humanity is set up, you wake up in the morning, you're thirsty. All of our primal stuff is very urge based, whether it's sex and romantical stuff, whether it's eating and drinking, and we'll die if we don't. It's all kind of based around this search of putting things into our lives and putting things into our bodies and putting our bodies into other things. And so when you look around, I was making the point in this conversation. I was like, if you look at humanity, certainly if I look at my own life, because I really thought about this for a long time, because she said, well, some people are fulfilled and happy and they don't really sit around with that angst. And I said, are they? I don't know them. I've never known one personally. Now, I can look around at people that I kind of tangentially know, and I can look around in society and at, some well-known face, and I could say, maybe that person seems, listen, here's what is true. There's certainly a scale. Not everyone's experiencing the same level of, there are certainly people who kind of brush stuff off much easier, who you would certainly describe as much more happy, fulfilled people than someone who's just totally miserable. So there's a huge scale. But as to describe someone as, by definition, a fulfilled, happy person, now I happen to think, this isn't knocking my family or anyone in my life, but they might not be toward the higher end of the scale as far as those kind of people. And certainly I don't know that anyone that really knows me would describe me that way either, as a fulfilled, happy person. But yeah, I was going, name one. Because if you know someone intimately, if it's a lot, I don't mean romantically, if you know someone intimately, a parent, a sibling, what have you, you're going to know their angst. And I think life is set up in a way where everybody experiences that. And the part that messes people up is this idea that we're not supposed to experience that. And then there becomes this resistance and these walls and these defenses and these defense mechanisms and all these weird detrimental cycles and games and stuff that get played out, instead of people just simply being their authentic selves and living and loving the way they were intended. In other words, not looking at that bad stuff and that hunger and that angst, and then on top of it, all the sadness and death and everything else that everyone experiences. You can't look at that like, oh, woe's me. It's a much deeper thing even than, oh, don't feel sorry for yourself. It's understanding that that stuff's all part of the blessing and part of the features, if not the most important parts of the blessing. So you can't resist it and put up defenses against it, because then that's going to fuck up your whole life and your journey, and you're not going to experience things in the genuine, authentic way that you're supposed to. And yeah, if you look around, our accomplishments and success, is that what fulfills people? I would argue the most successful people have probably felt the most unfulfilled. That's what creates that void. That's why they're so driven, right? Tiger Woods was still out there, banging Denny's waitresses on Xanax. It's like, who's more accomplished than that guy? Dude's been all over the world 100 times, has a gazillion dollars. He's the most accomplished dude ever. He's the GOAT at his sport. And it's like, he just has this void he's got to fill. Michael Jordan wasn't. I name these people because who's more accomplished than these guys? He was not pleasant to be around and had severe gambling addictions and other issues. It's like, who wouldn't be more fulfilled than these people? You have a beautiful family, all the resources in the world. most accomplished and successful you could be at a field that you love and that you're passionate about since you were a little kid. Like if you could choose one field to have been successful at, you did it in that field. And then still they have that. Again, I would argue that probably some of the most successful people have the deepest void feeling, whatever that feeling is, because that's what drives them to press harder than anyone else is pressed. And I guess, it can go both ways, right? If you have the void, you could become Michael Jordan or the homeless drug addict or, John Katz, who's probably closer on the scale to the homeless guy. Because again, everything's a scale. And I guess how people react to that is obviously going to be a wide variance there. But that's the stuff I try to work through and work out in my head, and to get on here and flesh out these thoughts. I hope it helps anyone that watches it, because I think, again, we do all experience the exact same type feeling. Even if we don't experience the same stuff, we experience the same feelings around it. And then it helps me to flush out the stuff that I keep it. Because, again, my default is not to be so expressive. And maybe I'd be that way with one or two people if, So in that regard, I always go back to it is a healthy thing, because my unhealthy default would be to just kind of wall up, keep the shit to myself, and think of it as that it was a midlife crisis and a slip up with things, and it's not. It's a permanent transition, and I think it's important, and I think there is huge meaning for me in this platform and in my ability to ponder and pontificate about all these things and discuss them, and where it goes and the implications of it have no bearing. And that's the most important thing too. And that's the other real mantra I've been kind of on myself with for a while now, which is just like you don't have to understand the meaning of something to know that it's meaningful. You don't have to understand the implications of everything either. You don't have to calculate. And I want to actually really delve into this in a sec. You don't have to calculate every step and think about, what's going to happen if I do this, or what's going to happen if I say this, or planning for a future that doesn't exist. And gosh, I want to talk a ton about that too, with the past, present, future construct. I think maybe I'll do that next episode, because that kind of really deserves its own thing. But listen, I read a quote recently that said, "Be the content you want to see in the world." The word content gives me listen, again, I don't want to ever come off like I'm putting other people down, and maybe it's a lot of denial on my part, but I don't want to be considered a content creator. That word gives me the fucking willies. But be the content you want to see in the world. And so when I look around and I see the content that's out there, and again, I'm not knocking anybody. I would never knock. This is the other main problem with society, is everybody's fucking knocking other people's success. This did not used to be a thing. This is not me having rose-colored glasses about the past. I know it's not. I can tell you for sure, when I was younger, people had an acceptance in themselves to kind of be a little more innocent and naive and look around at other people's success and be inspired by it and be like, wow, that's so cool, instead of now everybody just trying to be super cool themselves and looking at everybody and going, fuck that guy, why does he have all this following? So I don't knock any of these guys. If you're life relationship coach guru guy and I think everything you say is retarded, that's okay. I am actually still inspired by you. I go, it's great. This guy, listen, got a platform. I think a lot of that stuff is really detrimental. But then again, what am I going to do? Knock them when I'm not doing anything? Like, that's the most unhealthy response ever. So, be the content you want to see in the world. I look around at the content and what's there and what I think is lacking and what I think is probably wrong with a lot of it. So if I can shed my own little valuable 2 cents of light on that thing, then that's the whole point of it. And where it goes and what comes out of it doesn't matter if I put the right intentionality and heart and all that. So I've been thinking a lot about, and in prep for the show, I was thinking a lot about meaning of life, because that's what I really boiled all my stuff down to. I was like, Tom, what is it that you're struggling with so much when it comes to Okay, here's the thing. And again, this is why it's good for me to parse this stuff out. Because as I say it on here, actually, it clarifies it for me in my head too, which is I don't care about the destination, but I at least want to make sure that I have the right direction and intentionality, right? So you could have one without the other. I go, yeah, it all boils down to meaning of life stuff. As long as I'm talking about stuff that is meaningful, and really more importantly, I guess what I'm trying to say is the stuff that I always find myself talking about always has the undertones of that I'm trying to figure out the meaning of fucking life. And not that I could figure out the meaning of life, but I think pontificating those questions is really important. And I think what I mentioned a minute ago, I don't see a lot of that being done in a real genuine way necessarily. And I don't know. Call me a romantic, idealist, whatever. I do feel like if people were kind of more in that headspace more often, it would just be such a beneficial thing for everybody. And yeah, and one of the main things I talk about and have been talking about forever on the old episodes and everything else, and it ties into my main feeling of this whole meaning of life thing, is the authenticity, which you're probably tired of hearing me say authenticity. I'm tired of hearing myself say it, but it's everything. And when it comes to meaning of life, it's everything, because how can you have a meaningful life? How can you experience anything in a meaningful way if you're not starting from an authentic place where you're expressing, giving and receiving authentic energy? You just can't. You're already starting with this weird broken foundation, and so you're just gonna go through these motions where you're not in touch with your soul or consciousness or any of the meaningful stuff that you're supposed to be experiencing. Because I believe it's not just this life. This is our soul's journey. We didn't just come here by accident. I don't want to go on a whole tangent here, but I was watching this thing about religion recently, and listen, I am not knocking any religions at all, anything like that. Who knows? I was thinking about this construct of heaven and hell and all this stuff, and a lot of the older religions, the Eastern stuff, the Buddhism and Hindu and all that, even some the ancient versions of Judaism and such, are not into the heaven hell construct or into the reincarnation construct. And I thought, imagine you just live this short little snippet of a life. I mean, when you really get into how short a life is and can be, from a scientific standpoint, even with relativity and everything else, what a blip even all of humanity is in the timeline of the universe. But so one life, you die, you get hit by a car when you're 4, like, okay, you had 4 years on earth. Now you have eternity in heaven. I don't like that. Who wants to be in heaven for eternity? What if you're alive a week? That's great. You got a week on earth. Now you get eternity in heaven. What? I think of heaven as kind of this holdover place. And maybe we advance there eventually, but I think we keep coming back here. It's always made the most sense to me. And then other stuff I've delved into even very recently, it just reinforces it to death. Pardon the pun. You know what's interesting too? It really is. You always hear people talk about simulation theory and this idea that we're somewhere else and that we re-enter these lives so that we can experience this stuff because that's what an advanced species would do. And there's all this code and math to back that up, etc. But the reincarnation system of souls on a spiritual level it's the same thing if you think about it, right? Because there is this intermediary place. And we're not actually born and die, but our souls keep re-entering these lives. And I don't know how I got onto this religious, spiritual tip here. And I do believe there was a separate point I was going to make, and it's totally gone from my brain, and it's never going to come back. But I could tell you where I was going with this whole deal was that, yeah, we have to strip down. The journey is not about grabbing onto things and controlling things and trying to keep things. It's about stripping stuff away. And I feel that more strongly than ever, and I believe it more strongly than ever. And that is how you get to the authentic behavior stuff. You're not going to get anywhere unless you understand yourself first. The whole universe and the mysteries of it and everything else it's already in us anyway. So if you're talking about that kind of stuff, but if you're talking about human relations and interpersonal stuff and love and what you would view as stuff that would feel fulfilling and meaningful and joyful and happy in this life, you're never going to get there unless you know yourself first, because the stuff that you'd be doing is inauthentic to who you actually are. So it may seem meaningful and it may even on the surface feel meaningful, but it's not going to be meaningful. Not if you're starting from an inauthentic place. You've got to be willing, I believe, to strip stuff down and just open the fuck up and let stuff go. And then that's how you get to that place. That's how you are able to gauge, okay, this is the stuff that feels right for my, and then you can look, listen, it doesn't matter what societal trends say about that and what box you're supposed to fit into, whether it be in your personal life, with your relationships or anything else. It doesn't matter what some online guru person is telling you. And listen, if I come off like one of these guys, someone come shoot me in the fucking face, please. I actually wanted to talk about this because it's very relevant. There's a better word, relevant. I'm just going to always say relevant so I don't use apropos again. Yeah, this is a perfect example of what I'm talking about when I look around at because the advice that I see all these people giving, and a lot of people, that's the thing, everyone is so angst ridden and people are just these lost, lonely souls, and everybody feels that to some extent. And then the problem as I see it is that people are already overthinking and already putting up all these walls and already expressing all these weird projections and inauthentic behavior. And then they turn to these people, and maybe my algorithm thinks I need this shit because it's constantly on my Twitter and TikTok and everything else. They glom on and they turn to these people who then turn around and tell them, hey, here's how to calculate shit even more. If you want to do this, you have to take this really manipulated, premeditated, calculated step to trick this other person into doing this thing. And I see it and I read it's like, it's the one thing that really kind of just irks me. And I wouldn't care if these people were screaming nonsense into a vacuum somewhere. And again, I'm not knocking anyone's success. I wouldn't, if you said, John, you could press a button and cancel this person's platform, I would say absolutely not. If anything, it'll spark more of people saying different stuff in reaction to it. And again, progress and all that, it's not always a straight line. So whatever. God bless this motherfucking idiot and more power to him. But this guy's on TikTok. I don't even want it to sound like I'm exaggerating. It's funny because the video I'm referring to, as I scrolled, there was 2 more from 2 other people. I should look it up to do it proper justice because it's going to sound like I'm exaggerating. But the dude's basically like, hey, if you want to express negative stuff to your man, here's what you have to do. You have to apply, and he's not saying this with a hint of irony or anything else. You got to apply this 80-20 ratio and divide it by the fucking Pythagorean theorem. It wasn't called Pythagorean, something with a P, some Peter principle or something. Calculate this thing. Don't say this thing you really feel and want to say. Say this other thing instead. Then when he says this thing, don't reply right away even though you want to, but then say this other thing. It's like, brother, just be a fucking real human being. If you have to take all those calculated steps, that person's not for you, period. Right? If you're, and by the way, this isn't, and I looked at a bunch more of his videos and I was like, I can't. Because yeah, this is in particular is like, this is advice for people who are in love and like married and together and committed to each other. The idea, he had another one talking about along similar lines. If you're a woman and you want Chinese food, there's these ways to suggest it so that you're not, embracing your masculine energy and bringing out this guy's feminine energy by just saying that you want the Chinese food. And I'm like, brother, if people are playing these games, imagine being married to somebody. First of all, I'd be insanely annoyed. If you want fucking Chinese food, tell me you want Chinese. Don't go into some game of percentages of some formula that you read online. And then I scroll down, and like the very next video is this other dude saying how to text in the early stages of dating or whatever. And it was like all these manipulative. First of all, I could kind of see needing advice on more so in the early stage stuff, okay? And by the way, this is a really important distinction to make. When it comes to professional settings and business transactions and things that are transactional based, not I'm supposed to love this person based. Yeah, when it comes to professional stuff, and I can tell you, having been in sales my whole life, yes, you should handle people because they don't matter to you on a personal level. So it's like, fuck that guy. Yeah, handle him and play those games. And if you're doing it, I brought up the example of if I'm having brain surgery, I don't care if my brain surgeon is a narcissistic egomaniac. If his success rate is way better than the guy who's really nice and sweet, I want the asshole operating on my brain because that's transactional. So there's an example of something that even though it matters, it's still totally transactional. I'm not going to have a relationship with this surgeon where we have to eat dinners together and things like that. With parents and kids, it's tricky. Listen, I don't have kids, so I don't even want to comment. I could tell you with people like that, like, yeah, I'll handle my mom and stuff. I would say anyone you're living with, anyone you want to grow with, anyone you really want to experience the meaningful stuff in life with, you have to be your authentic self or they're not for you. The people you choose to put into your life, they're not for you if you feel you have to be that way. And it's probably both your faults if you feel that way or some combination of. Because the worst people ever, the people that make you feel like you have to be on eggshells around them, that's the fucking worst. That you're always worried that you're going to say or do the wrong thing because they're forcing you into a calculative position. You can't just express the kind of food you want or where you want to go or whatever like that because they do react and respond irrationally to the stuff that you say and do. And if that's the case, rather than advise people to play these games, I would say just embrace your truest self, have real boundaries, and have a fuck you attitude if you don't like it. I mean, obviously there's a line. You shouldn't be an abusive dickhead. The furthest I would take the calculative advice with an actual loved one is just the cliche grandma advice. If you have nothing nice to say, don't say anything, right? That's just basic manners. And that's not calculating. That's, hey, I'm not going to express this negative thing for no reason. That's not stifling your spirit or anything else. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about if you have something genuine that's not mean that you want to express and it's real to you, whether it's something trivial like what you want from the Chinese or whether it's something really important like what you want in the relationship, just come out and say it in the most open and authentic way and direct, clear, concise way possible. I promise you, people's problem is not that they're not thinking about things too much, right? And to advise someone like that who's already feeling so conflicted, well, now you should overthink even more and calculate even more. No, my advice and maybe I'd be a shitty life coach, therapist, sex guru, relationship advisor guy, because my advice to everybody would be the exact same version of, have you tried just stripping it down and letting all that go and just being your fucking self? Both of you, just be yourselves. That's what I would tell every couple. Get out of here. Go be yourselves. Drop the bullshit. You're too inauthentic. I can't even talk to whatever person you're presenting me with. Go figure out who's underneath all that bullshit, and then I'll come talk to him, and you won't need to talk to me at that point anyway. Yeah, and then right below that other dude was a chick. Same thing. Here's how to talk to your avoidant partner without sounding like you're nagging them and all this. And it's take these 12 steps and brother. And all the replies in these things, thank you so much. This is so useful. What would you suggest I do in this situation? And I'm not saying there aren't situations that require some tact and advice and so forth. But yeah, I think specifically if you're talking about like people these are like married people, and all anyone ultimately wants is to just feel like they can sit and be themselves. People spend all day, again, because in a professional setting and every other transactional setting in the world, and 99% of our interactions with people out in the world, are acquaintances at best, and then mostly all strangers that we'll never know. And so we spend all day. Someone said online, I was discussing something similar like this on Twitter, and she said, if you become a mark if you're too innocent and all that stuff. And she's right. And I understand why people feel that way. And there are a lot of assholes out there that do a lot of bad shit. So I understand why in the world you can't just walk around like a cuddly teddy bear. It'd be nice, ideally, fine, if it was all hippy dippy love out there, maybe someday, thousands of years from now. But yeah, I'm not saying to walk around in life like that, but with your loved ones, yeah, that's the thing. We spend all day with those defenses and guards against all the unpredictability and danger and things that are really out in the world. In your own home, though, to be that calculated, and it's all a form of manipulation too. It's like all the advice is based on, hey, do this thing that doesn't coincide with how you really feel, but by doing it, now you're going to make this other person do this other thing, which is your goal. And anyone who's got emotional IQ is going to feel that manipulation happening to them, number one. But then why do you want to do that anyway? You're not going to manipulate anyone into changing. If anything, people change because they're inspired to, not because they're being told to. And if you're an open, loving, accepting, caring person with them, and if they're your peoples, that's the thing. See, that's where I think a lot of these problems align, is people are trying to force situations that aren't what they should be. And so no amount of manipulation or advice is ever going to change that. Everything boils down to accepting things for what they are. And even if something's not ideal, still accept it for what you are or for what it is. But like I was saying before, if you're really in love with someone and that's your person, you're not going to be triggered in a deep way by how they chew their food or the way that it's none of that stuff's you'll probably adore it. If anything, because we all have these weird idiosyncratic things. I make a lot of weird noises, right? I'm not a noisy person. Like, I'm not a clomper, but if I'm sitting down or standing up or moving or doing anything, I kind of do a lot of involuntary moaning and groaning, and I don't even realize I'm doing it. But that would trigger the fuck out of someone who's not right for me. And if someone was right for me, they probably find it adorable. Yeah, so back to what I was saying before, be the content you want to see in the world. 90% of the content I see flies in the face of embracing our true essence and our souls and our hearts, and nobody's saying just be your motherfucking self. And if anything, all these relationship guys are always like, soulmates isn't a thing. You really have to listen. There's a place for this. This is the problem, and this is what I was really getting at a second ago. Is there's a place for practicality and being efficient and transactional like that. But to apply that to your loving relationships in life, that seems really counterintuitive to me of what it's all supposed to be about. And and I say that as someone who's done his own version of that and could never get out of his own fucking way either. And my calculations weren't about manipulating anyone else, but they were about controlling my own environment and trying to control stuff that I can't control anyway. And I could never really just kind of let go and be and give and receive love in what would really be a genuine way, because I always felt like I was being myself from like a personality standpoint. I was just keeping a huge part of that other stuff buried away and not letting it out or showing it or being open or being willing to be vulnerable in that way. And that's the hardest thing. It's the hardest thing for dudes especially. And again, with all this contrary advice to that, it's all such machismo, self-proclaimed alpha bullshit. If this guy is too emotional, listen, no, don't be emotionally unhinged. Be in control. Yeah, it's masculine to be in control of your emotions, but it's not masculine to not feel any emotions. And especially if you're talking about with a woman that you're supposed to be in love with, yeah, if you don't open up and be actually vulnerable down to a soul level with that person, or vice versa for a woman with a man, then what in the world is the fucking point of any of that in the first place? Because yeah, listen, that's a huge part, if not the main feature of the beauty and magic of life when it comes to love and all that, is that, yeah, not everyone's for everyone, right? How boring would that be if everybody was for everybody? That's what makes those connections and things so special, is because they are rare and special and unique. And so to think that you would then enter into those type of games with someone that you are truly and deeply in love and accepting of, I just can't imagine a scenario where that's the right answer. And yeah, there are these really practical people. And listen, practical people, this is a discussion I was having with my family. I was over at with my aunts and uncles and stuff like a month ago, and we were talking about it in regards to my uncle, who's a lawyer, and he was there in the room with us. We weren't talking behind his back, and he's a very practical person. I remember when my dad had passed away, we were over sitting Shiva at my dad's place. Shiva's what, for those who don't know, what the Jews do. You stay at the house of the deceased, and people come by for the next few days or week or whatever. They bring food and sit with you for a while, yada, yada, yada. Anyway, I was talking to my uncle outside about, really kind of feeling the presence of my dad's spirit there and all this type of stuff. And he was just like, yeah, no, I don't. He makes no qualms about being that way either. Yeah, no, I don't believe in any of that stuff. There are very practical people that are never going to go to these places. And maybe those people, this type of stuff doesn't apply to as much, right? They're very into the just the human construct and not the stuff beyond it or underneath it. It's a very structured, it's a very productive way to live. Some of the most productive people are this way. They're not trying to fill that hungry void I was talking about before. They're just very get stuff done in an orderly, responsible way. Wake up at the same time every day. Eat the orderly breakfast. Very organized usually. I guess we need a lot of those people in the world too. We can't all be floating around pontificating about the greater meaning of things. I guess, there would be nobody to defend you in court when you need them. So I'm not naive enough to think you can separate out the humanity and all the different variances and all that go along with it. And yeah, if I come off a bit like a dreamer or an idealist or any of that, I think I'm just an optimist. I think at the end of the day, you really have to sit there and be able to sit with yourself alone in a room or outside or whatever, and just kind of look up at the sky and be like, it's all fucking fine. It's all gravy, baby, right? I think if you can do that, and that's always your default, is that this blessed sip of life is enough. I'll keep quoting Pig. Shout out DMB. Shit, I got to do that list too. But if you can look up and do that, none of that other stuff's going to seem like such high stakes, big deal type of thing. And you'll always just be like, hey, it's me and my soul and the universe. And take it or leave it, good or bad. I'm not thinking about the implications or any of that stuff. I'm just me. Flaws and issues at all. With that outlook, if I was giving somebody relationship advice, yeah, I would say the opposite. I'd say there are people who are meant for you, and that you won't find them unless you're really yourself, and that those people will actually think you're fucking adorable. With your flaws and your issues and all, they're just going to love it. And you won't have to play games with them to get them to love and appreciate and find that stuff adorable. You won't have to be guarded and walking on eggshells and trying to figure out how you're going to say the thing that you feel. You'll just be able to say it and you'll feel comfortable saying it. I mean, really, what is the other advice? You want people to hide who they are even more? Suppress this thing you really feel. Hide it away more, as if that's not already their problem. As if their problem isn't that they're already too out of touch with who they are. And now you're saying, well, suppress this thing you feel even more for the sake of playing this game instead. Or again, is it that you're trying to change people? Because you're not going to change anyone either. And again, you're not going to change them that way. You change people through inspiring them, if anything, and then they end up changing themselves because they feel stronger and inspired by you just by your presence. And the way you do that is by just being genuine and loving and open yourself. That's the thing about all this stuff, and the reason why I implore it so much too, because I find it with myself and I see it with other people, and I think anyone listening to this could benefit from it too, is that actually is the way. If you look around and you go, man, these people in my life, I wish this or I wish that, you be that way. Just like that quote of, will be the content you want to see in the world. You be the fucking thing you want to see in the other people. And yeah, maybe it's not like, oh, I'm changing the world. No, but I bet you change the energy in your household. You'll change the energy with your husband or your kids and shit like that, for sure. Be that energy you want to see, and people will gravitate to it, and they'll respect it. Even on a subconscious level, they're going to respect, oh, this person's being totally genuine and authentic with me. Even if it makes me a little uncomfortable, they're going to end up ultimately respecting it and then embracing it more. They're never going to embrace that other shit. Even if it works for a little while, even if it works in certain situations, all that gamesmanship, on a subconscious level, everyone's going to know and feel like they're being fucked with. And it's not going to feel like love to them. It's going to feel like that calculative manipulation bullshit. I don't see how that is productive or beneficial in a real way. And yeah, and the people that glom onto it, again, it's a lot of lost, lonely souls. And then also, look, people want a shortcut. We have a very impatient ADD type society now. And yeah, people don't want to take the time to delve into their own soul and figure themselves out. And that's where all the answers are. They want the quick fix. Give me the quick advice on this thing I can do. And I don't think it works that way. And listen, along these same lines, another big advice thing I see, and I think a lot of people are going to disagree with this, and it's kind of a nuanced thing, but a lot of the main advice you see from these motivational speaker types and the online guru relationship, it's actions, actions, actions. It's if their actions don't match their words, that's all you need to know. And again, that's probably true a huge portion of the time. And there are a lot of ill-intended assholes out there who are using people left and right, whether they're actual, most overused diagnosis of like a narcissistic personality or not. There's just a lot of using type dickheads out there who really don't have good intentions and a good heart and your best interest in mind. So I don't blame people for looking at that. And again, when it comes to real transactional stuff and professional settings, I'm all about that. Everything should be a meritocracy in that regard. Every business and industry should be a meritocracy in that regard. It should all be results and action based. You want to play on this basketball team, you have to perform a certain way. I don't care if you're the greatest guy in the world and there's a legit reason why you can't perform that way. I got to get somebody out on the court that's going to, so I don't, again, my brain surgeon, whoever. But when it comes to loving people and interpersonal relationships, and maybe not everyone can feel, if I'm in a room with someone, I can feel their fucking energy. I can feel their heart. I can feel their intentions. I care way, way, way less about that person's actions. I care way less even about their behavior than I care about their heart and their intentionality. Their heart and their intentionality is everything. I'm going to live with this person. I'm going to eat meals with them and whatever, sleep in a bed, whatever it is. I'm going to feel that energy. And yeah, maybe that person is great with doing things and they show up, and that's all great stuff. That's not bad stuff, but why? Where's their heart at? Where's their motivation? Does that matter? You go, well, how does that manifest? It manifests because I'm going to feel that. I'm going to feel it when I'm in the room with you. I'm going to feel it when we embrace. I'm going to feel it when we're eating a meal together. And that feeling for me, when it comes to interpersonal relationships or love or romance, that's everything. That's everything. And so if that person has issues or deficiencies and shit that they've been carrying around their whole life, I'm not going to take that person. I'm going to embrace and adore that too. I'm not going to listen. That's the thing with this action advice. There's an underlying implication happening there, which flies in the face of something I've ranted about for a very long time, which is, it's actually in my pinned tweet still for almost a year now, which is, you can't take what other people do personally. In almost every case, yeah, I guess sometimes things are personal, but even then when it's intended, you shouldn't take it personally. And I guess that's another tangent to go on there. But for the sake of this, what I'm about to say, let's say 90% of the shit people do, it really has nothing to do with you. And if you look at a loved one, and I'm talking about actions and maybe even more commonly inactions. And if this sounds like a personal defense, it's not. But I do say this as somebody who, again, has never been able to get out of his own fucking way. And so for sure, there would be people that would look at me and say, John's inaction is indicative of X, Y, and Z, because I haven't acted in a lot of ways that I should have and shown up for things that I should have and fostered and maintained so many relationships the way I should have for those reasons. So yeah, when it comes to loved ones and putting so much emphasis on the actions or the behavior, and yes, everything has its limits. Someone should not be abusive or mean to you. Again, like I was talking about before, somebody punches you in the face, I don't care where their heart is at. That's crossing, obviously, just a black and white line. You don't want to get punched in the face. But if someone's not showing up for you in the way that they should be, or they seem to really be open and loving and caring, yet they're not able to do certain things, you're never going to understand the deep psychology that goes along with why they're doing that stuff and the stuff that they've been likely carrying around their whole lives, the stuff that likely they don't even understand. And so I think a lot of that only look at their actions and behavior stuff has an implication of take their behavior personally. And I think that's actually a huge pitfall for people. And again, I'm not saying, because in a huge amount, if not the majority of cases, people's actions are indicative of how they feel. But to take it as a blanket barometer like that, listen, a lot of people that have certain types of issues, and I could tell you again, just from my own personal stuff, everything's very fear-based. Everybody's very fear-driven. And when it comes to conflict and shit that people carry around with their baggage and their walls and their false beliefs and all that, that's all based in fears. And when it comes to being afraid of things and in other words, I could just tell you from my own personal psyche, if there were times that I didn't show up when I should have and stuff, it was fear-based. It wasn't pretty much ever a reflection of, well, I purposely don't want to be there. I don't want to be there for this person. I don't feel a certain way about this person. And my point is, with people that have that type of default avoidance, it's heightened infinitely and just 10 times more intense when the thing is actually meaningful, right? And I'm not excusing that behavior, saying that it's good. It's not good. It's not good to have somebody that you care about need you or rely on you, and then you selfishly just say, well, I'm going to give in to my own fears and insecurities and then not be there for you when you need me. That's terrible. And it's really easy to see why that would be insanely hurtful and disappointing to the other people involved in those scenarios. But yeah, you really do have to separate yourself from it and look at it and say, okay, that's not a reflection on me. Now, if you need those things in your life and you think, well, this person's never going to change, and it's great that they have a good heart, but they're never going to be there for me because they can't get past this thing and I can't fix them or save them or whatever, then that's fine. You know, that's what people have to decide. People have to decide what's worth it. Everything meaningful is going to come with a cost associated with it. Otherwise, it wouldn't be meaningful. And yeah, if you go, well, this is a person that I love and adore and I want to spend my life with, I'm willing to work with that and look past those things and embrace and adore those things and understand that they don't have anything to do with me. And maybe this person will improve as they go on because they've already improved a lot, or maybe they won't. Anyone you love and are with long enough is going to cause you pain. I know that's an old saying, but yeah, you have to decide who you want to go through that pain with. And I think probably the best relationships are the ones that kind of grow with each other and foster those things. I brought this up a while back, kind of along the lines of this same energy, which is, it's funny, I hadn't even thought of this as an example, but was also I had seen some online relationship person talking about how, it was giving advice to women, saying that women should they shouldn't date a man's potential, right? That he should already have a lot of stuff figured out, and that it's not up to these women to help these men achieve that stuff. And I thought that's just terrible advice. Men in particular are really craving and looking for inspiration, and I've seen it so many. Nothing inspires a guy like a woman can, that he loves. And to go through that together, women should want to be the one that brings out the potential in a man. No one's going to love her more than that. No one's going to end up just loving and appreciating her more than that guy. And so I think that's just really bad advice too, especially when it comes to men. And women are different. I don't think women look to men for inspiration in the same way. I think they're looking for other stuff. That's a whole nother topic. But yeah, men in particular, I think it's a big reason that we crave the romantic love anyway. It kind of gives us a different sense of purpose. And I think some women can be kind of intimidated or made uncomfortable at the idea of that, and they shouldn't be. Relationship guru advice now. I'm going to do calls. You can call in like Loveline, and I will give love advice from a guy who's fucked it up. But yeah, so I would just say, if you're looking at other people in your life and how they behave, and especially when it comes to, I always say with siblings and parents and kid, whatever, all this drama and everybody's so concerned with how everybody's acting and doing and saying, and I can't believe you said this and did this and all that. 99% of that stuff, really, just look at that person and say they're buried under a lifetime mountain of shit that I'll never begin to understand, and their behavior has nothing to do with me. And even if they are personally fucking with you on purpose, which does happen a lot, even still, it really has nothing to do with you. You're just the recipient. But their behavior is still not based in you, and you can't take any of that weight on, and you can't take any of that stuff personally. And yeah, a lot of people are just afraid to do the stuff that's really in their hearts. And it's as hard on them as it is anyone. It's harder. They're the ones sitting there. Believe me, they know. They're the ones sitting there agonizing over it, not understanding why they can't get past that hurdle and can't get out of their own way, and just can't take these leaps and remove themselves from this mental prison and this state of paralysis that they're in. And for them, it's the realest thing ever. And that's going to manifest in all kinds of ways. I don't think that's who a person is. I don't think that's who someone's soul is. I don't think that's what someone's heart and intentionality is. And so, yeah, when it comes to interpersonal stuff, I care about that other shit way more. I'll take an authentic, good-hearted, really flawed, fucked up person that has a lot of issues all day over some really seemingly well-adjusted, productive person who's a manipulative, inauthentic asshole. It's not even close. And again, if it's my mechanic or my surgeon, I'll say the opposite. And yeah, for a lot of people with certain sets of issues, which is a lot of people, the realer the feeling, the more that's on the line, the scarier it is, and the more avoidant they become. And that's really the tragic irony of the whole thing, because that ends up costing them the stuff that they really cared about more than anything. And then in any case, I would really just look around at the people in your life. It's doing a service to you too. When I say this stuff, it's like, oh, I'm trying to be so noble and soapboxy and all that. If you want to even look at it from a selfish standpoint, it's the best thing you can do for yourself as well, is to not take on all this stuff unnecessarily that you shouldn't be taking on. It's hard enough. We all already have our own stuff to battle. Imagine trying to take on someone else's battle and then taking it on as some sort of reflection of yourself or some burden that you're supposed to carry. There really is. That's the whole key that I'm trying. I want to get to the top 10 feel-good songs coming up. There really is a way to accept things without understanding them. And I guess that's the theme of this particular show. And just be your fucking self. I want to see more people express themselves genuinely and not worry about other people in society as much as they are. Okay, top 10 feel-good songs, favorite songs. I did this list. Interesting about this list, I have to give caveats. I had to factor in a lot of things. I had to factor in the degree to which a song was feel good, because there are even songs on this list that if I just said name your favorite songs, they might go above other songs on the list. Does that make sense? But they're not as feel goody. And then there were songs where I had to really sit and think, well, how does it make me feel? There are songs that are supposed to be feel good that make me kind of feel bittersweet melancholy for all types of different reasons. And then there are some sadder songs that kind of make me feel good. Although I don't know that any of those made the list, because again, it was degree of feel good. So all right, let me get to it. Coming in, number 10, The Beatles, Hey Jude. This is other interesting. All my music lists are usually all like my 90s bands. There's a couple of those in here. But all that stuff, I guess, too, is I listen to a lot of sad, melancholy shit, I guess. The 90s stuff, that's all my favorite. A lot of that's really kind of dark. But if you look at a lot of like that 60s, 70s, 80s shit, yeah, it was a lot more. I think that says a lot about the times. This is what I was talking about. People were a lot more innocently dreamy, optimistic back then. It's changed. Not that I was alive in 1968, but Hey June. Just a really feel good song. The message is just so sweet, and what I guess the story goes, McCartney wrote that for Lennon's son Julian. Hey Jude. All right, moving along. I'm not going to give diatribes on all these. Here's a curveball. This made the list relatively recently. One of my Keys trips, and not the main version, because I still don't really love the main version as much. It's Island in the Sun from Weezer, 2001. There's a version, if you go on Spotify, it's from the Spotify sessions. And it was playing at the pool one day, and I was outside. I was like, man, this is the best version of this song. It's like very subtly changed, but I added it to some playlists. And since then, whenever I put it on, it just gives me this really good vibe. And maybe I relate it to that day, but obviously the song is called Island in the Sun, and I'm not going to sing them all, but yeah, it's about just being there in the sun, having fun. So how can you not feel good with that? Coming in number 8, similar vibe. Also 1968. What are the odds? I didn't even realize that when I wrote these down. Sitting on the Dock of the Bay. Otis Redding. There's been some really great covers of that song. Otis did the original. This one was tricky because it does give me a little bittersweet. And actually, if you listen to the lyrics, they're not happy lyrics. So I don't even know that it's meant to be. It's kind of like a feel-good song. It's like it's sad, but there's an undertone of I've said undertone a lot this show. There's an undertone of acceptance there, sitting on that bay, just watching the tide roll away. That's terrible. Coming in number 7, another oldie. This is a list of oldies. 1974, Forever Young, Bob Dylan. Not to be mistaken with Rod Stewart, or I always point out, Rod Stewart, Forever Young, Alphaville, Forever Young. Both great songs, not to be mistaken with OG Bob Dylan, Forever Young. Totally different song than those other two. And that's younger Dylan. I was just watching some Dylan recently. He doesn't always sound so great, but he was really sounding good. The other one was from like 68 or something before he got all nasally. He could sing a little bit. May you stay forever. All right, coming in. I lost my list here. Coming in number 6, another oldie, 1970, Bridge Over Troubled Water. I won't try to sing that. It's a ballad. Everyone knows Bridge Over Troubled Water, Simon and Garfunkel. Again, so songs are feel good in different ways, right? Some songs are feel good in like a sweet, loving way. Some songs are feel good like they get you amped up. Like I almost did a bunch of rap stuff on here, like stuff I put on when I'm in like my gotta get shit done playlist that gets you kind of amped. That's a different kind of feel good. This was tough to parse apart, but that's obviously just feel good in like a warm, loving way. You know, just the message of that song. like a bridge. All right. Coming in number 6. Now we're getting in a couple from I didn't do any in my 90s. I really surprised myself. I was like, let me be honest. I'm not just gonna do my typical Pearl Jam, Guns N' Roses shit that I'm always on about. Coming in number 5, No Rain, Blind Melon, 1993. Everyone knows this song with the Bumblebee Girl fine. Blind Melon is insanely underrated. They actually have a couple songs that could have made this list, but... And again, it's similar to like Dock of the Bay. It's kind of almost the same message. It's like yeah, it's sad, but hey, fuck it. I accept it. Like, call me crazy, right? All that I can say is that my life is pretty plain. Coming in number 4, 1977, Scenes from an Italian Restaurant, Billy Joel. Billy Joel, again, had a few that could have made this list. Him and Elton both. A lot of feel good. That whole vibe, that whole 70s, 80s piano vibe, that's just, My Life and all those could have for sure made it. Scenes is a good example too. Probably would have been higher on the list if you just said, what are your favorite songs? But it is such a feel good song. Especially, and it's like two, 3 songs in one, but the Brenda and Eddie, all the stuff about Brenda with an R, Brenda and Eddie. Yeah, it's anything that gets you kind of bopping and smiling. It's a fun boppy song. Coming in number 3, another oldie, 1973, Leonard Skinner, Simple Man. Just one of my all-time favorite songs ever. Some of my all-time favorite lyrics ever. And again, feel good kind of in its own way, told from this perspective of the mom's advice. And it is the best advice. It's actually my only bio line on Twitter, which is be something you love and understand. But yeah, be a simple kind of man. Be something you love and understand. And just that whole message and just to blow it out with the guitar like that. Coming in, be a simple. See, now I have OCD to sing a line from all these songs. Coming in number 2, another oldie. I'll keep saying another oldie because it still surprises me. 1970, Van Morrison, Into the Mystic. Again, just an all-time favorite, great. How can you listen to Into the Mystic and not feel good, right? And it's just such a beautiful, and when he comes in with that, I want to rock your gypsy soul. It's hard to find, here's what's tragic, because I've looked, it's hard to find good live concert footage from these guys back then. Like, you look for some good Van Morrison stuff, you can't really, it's like, because they weren't recording and filming that. There's some decent audio recordings, but it's rare to find like a good YouTube video and stuff like I'd love to see, imagine there was just these renditions of like Van in his prime blowing out into the Mystic. Anyway, coming in number 1, I am staying true to, you guys can gag because I mention all the time and on every list, Dave Matthews Band, 2001, Every Day. The reason this is number 1, and here's the thing, I'll say it again, Every Day is not a more favorite song of mine than Into the Mystic or Simple Man or Scenes from an Italian Restaurant or any of those. It's not even one of my top Dave Matthews songs, but it's the most feel-good fucking song there is. And when it was like I was going to do a driving list even for the drive, it was going to make that list too. It's just that song, and it comes on in the car and everything from that. Just, and here's the thing with Dave too, it's the live versions are part of what make the songs, and it's definitely part of what makes this song such a feel-good song. Because whenever they play it at the shows I've been to, but yeah, it's that beginning part with the crowd, that honey, honey, come and dance with me, and it's the chorus is just a message that all you need is what you want is. All you need is love. Yeesh. Yeah, all you need is love. Is there a happier, more feel-good message than that? Just come fucking dance with me. All you need is love. And that's number 1. Dave Matthews, Every Day, 01. Top 10. John Gat's favorite most feel-good songs. And yeah, this is kind of a long episode. Next one, I want to get more into this whole time and living in the present and all that, because it really just coincides a ton with that whole being open and accepting and authentic and loving and gracious and all that good stuff. And really, everything should be more fun and joyous than it is. And that's where the appreciation and the stuff comes in. There's a really simple quote from, speaking to someone who's an expert on the time, living in the present, past and future stuff. Alan Watts, who I've talked about a lot, articulates that stuff better than anybody. There's an Alan Watts quote that says something like, "Man suffers because he takes seriously what the gods made for fun." And it's true. And I would just say what the gods made for us to enjoy and to be a blessing. And we do focus way too much on the negative aspects of it and the painful stuff. And it's all supposed to be a fun blessing. It's supposed to be joyous. And I got to do a better job of that than anybody. So that's it. I truly, truly hope some of what I say is helpful. Makes you guys think about stuff as it relates to your own lives and how maybe it can be beneficial in some way. And I really appreciate you all tons. Thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you've had a beautiful week, and I will see you again soon. Be good.